So, what's going on? This is my wrap to the first half of 2025. This has been the first real year where I've gotten fully into reading. I feel like I had a really hard time really deciding what genre was for me, and then I kind of discovered BookTube as a whole and started finding a real community of people who read sci-fi and fantasy, and I've always thought that would be a genre for me, but I could never find something that really hit home for me until my wife was like, you should watch BookTube, find good recommendations. So then in January I watched a bunch of videos, picked out 3 books, and immediately got hooked and started reading. Instead of one book a month, going to 3 to 4 books a month. So I wanted to start my own BookTube, be able to really talk about books, because I don't really have anyone in my life that I actually that reads the same books that I'm really enjoying at the moment. So I wanted to kind of step out there and start to talk about books that I want to read, as well as the books that I have read, and really talk about how great they've been, and hopefully be that person who can create recommendations for someone else to go find those things. And also have a video library of, hey, I read this book then, this is how good it was, how bad it was, how much I enjoyed it, am I ever going to go back to it, things of that nature. So 25 books through the first 6 months of the year. It's currently the start of July, and then I want to also work on my TBR and really hold myself accountable to let's try and read these exact books this month, because I am one of those people who starts a book and just I don't know if I'm fully committed here, and some books just fall out for me. I do either a hard or a soft DNF with a lot of books, and then this way I can hold myself more sort of accountable to this needs to get done by this time, and be able to record it and kind of share it with whomever's out there. So what I wanted to start with was my top 10 from this year. It's been a very large getting into sci-fi and fantasy, because I had read books here and there that fall into the sci-fi fantasy genre, but nothing had really stuck for me until really this point. So number 10. This is my number 10, which is a top 10 book of the year so far for me, which is Mistborn, Brandon Sanderson. I bet most people have heard of this book. Very, very good. But I think this might be a little bit of a hot take. I had my problems with it. It's I would give this 3.5 stars out of 5. I enjoyed it. It was a very good story. I was very happy at the end with where it ended up. I think my issue with it was really creative idea. I was talking with people online about this. I enjoyed the magic system. It was really original. It just felt like I was reading a textbook. It was part 1, introduce the characters, they meet each other, how they get together. That was very fun. I enjoyed meeting the characters, understanding the world building. Then part 2 was here's the magic system, and we're going to go step by step by step by step of these magic systems through parts 2 and 3, where it was there's no sort of mystery to it, which maybe that means I'm not a huge Mistborn fan. I will say this is not my first Sanderson, because when I said this, multiple people were maybe you just don't like Sanderson. I do like Sanderson. I have The Way of Kings over here. I haven't read The Words of Radiance or Oathbringer yet, specifically because I was reading online, you should read Mistborn before you even get to book 2 of the Stormlight Archive. Way of Kings was 5 stars for me. I loved that book. I also read Warbreaker, which Warbreaker was amazing. I loved Warbreaker. That was also a 5-star read for me. Whereas this, I didn't believe or care about the romance at all through it. And I enjoyed the characters, but I didn't fall in love with any of the characters really. So I very much enjoyed it. I just wasn't in love with this. I still plan on reading, and I have the next 2 books in the Mistborn saga. I don't know if I'll continue past book 3 to the like other, what is it, 4-book series after that. We'll find out, but I do want to get more into Sanderson because I know I'm going to really like Words of Radiance because I loved Way of Kings. So we'll see from there after that. But overall, very much enjoyed it. It was like a 3.5 stars, which I think is a good rating. I didn't finish the book and I was like, I hated that. I didn't finish the book where I was like, I won't continue that series, but I finished it slightly disappointed, which might have been my issue because I came in with such high hopes. I was like, this is going to be one of my favorite series ever, and I didn't get there. Dungeon Crawler Carl, Matt Dinneman. I enjoyed this book. I think I'm going to continue the series, but it's kind of like one of those things where everyone in the world's obsessed with it. It was funny, I got this book, my wife got me this book before like I found BookTube, so it was just like, I didn't get all the hype beforehand, like I hadn't even heard it. My wife was just like, oh, I think you'll like this, I've heard of this. So I didn't come in with the expectations of like, this is the new hot thing, just because I wasn't listening to people on the internet talk about fantasy and sci-fi books or lit RPG books as a whole. I really enjoyed it. I would say it was like a 5-star read, probably through like 350, 400 pages. And then by the end, I was just like, this was really fun. I really enjoyed it. But like, I kind of get it. I've kind of had like the fun with these characters. I just don't know if I am ready to commit to go like, what, 7 more books here. I will say, I know people online talk about it like crazy. I read the book, I didn't do the audiobook. So maybe the audiobook, maybe I'll do the audiobook for book 2. Maybe that'll change my whole perspective on this. But it kind of felt like, I don't know if you were around people when like Rick and Morty hit season like 3, where it was like, everyone was like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to the world. I'm like, it's good. I don't need this to become my personality. It was funny. Like, very few books have I ever read where I laugh out loud, like, a lot of times. But I don't know if I need to continue it. But regardless, like, I think I gave that, like, a 4.2 stars out of 5. Like, I really, really enjoyed it. And this is ending at 9, because I feel like I found so many good reads. So, number 8. Number 8 is The Wolves of Kala, which is book 5 of Stephen King's The Dark Tower. This is like a real changing point because this is like the last book that I was picking without the knowledge of anything on BookTube. I got really into the series over the past like probably year and a half, 2 years. But it's something that kind of continues with how I just read in general, which is I'll read a book in a series and I'll really like it. And then after that, I need like 1 or 2 books off. And that's been the case with this. This is 7 books and 1 novella. And I have just finished earlier this year, book 5, which I enjoyed. It's a smooth, like 4.25 out of 5. My issue with it mainly is I just liked 2, 3, and 4 significantly better. The novella, after it's like 4.5, which is The Wind Through the Keyhole, right? Yeah, The Wind Through the Keyhole. That book kind of felt pointless. It was enjoyable. I got to follow Roland in sort of backstory again, which is fine. It was an enjoyable read. It's not something that I'm going to go back to, and if I ever do the reread, which I think I would like to, because I do think books 2, 3, and 4 are like my favorite books ever, maybe. I wouldn't read 4.5. It kind of felt like I just wasted 350 pages not to really enjoy the actual cast of characters. What's so good about this, without really like spoiling, hey, this is book 5. Without spoiling, it's really just like a continuation of those characters and unraveling the mystery. I do think what's the best part about these books is you read book 1 and you're kind of like, I enjoyed it. I don't get what's going on at all, but I think I like the main character. I think I like the other character, and you're not sold on like who's good, who's bad. You're just following the beam, and You wanna find out what's going on, and through books 4 and 5, you learn more and more about the characters and like kind of what they're going through, and their personalities really just start to meld, and they're a real quartet. For those who know, there's a big cliffhanger here, but the real reason why I haven't continued on yet, because this was genuinely my first read of the new year, especially before I started reading books I found on BookTube, is I've just heard that book 6 is really bad. So I haven't been rushing towards Song of Susanna. It's a shorter book. I know I'll read it this year. My goal is to read both book 6 and 7 before the end of the year, but it's definitely not high on my TBR. But I would like to be done with this series before the end of the year so I can like fully appreciate it at the end. On to book number 7, which is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I loved this book. This is a 4.5 out of 5. This whole series, just to kind of sell it if you haven't heard of it, and the reason I wanted to go towards it and really read it, kind of step outside my comfort zone, because everything I had been reading throughout the year is more like classic or more modern fantasy than classic fantasy, or modern sci-fi rather than classic sci-fi. This is I believe it came out in the 90s. I want to say like 96, 97, somewhere in that range. Is very classic. It's the story of a bastard who has to like kind of find his way, find his personality, and you're following Fitz's chivalry from literal birth until at the end of book 3. Probably, I think he's supposed to be like 18. And I read all 3 books in the Farseer trilogy. So within this whole world, there's, I believe it's 14 books, but they're separated into trilogies and one 4-book series where you finish the trilogy and you feel very complete with the story, and then you can continue on. I know the second one, which is the Live Ship Traders, it doesn't necessarily follow the characters from the Farseer trilogy, but it connects in the same world. My favorite things about this book is specifically you really fall in love with the character and the world and how he interacts. And this might not make sense, because for those of you who have read it and those of you who have not, these books are a bit depressing. It's like Fitz chivalry has a hard life. People are mean to him. He goes through a lot of issues, and his biggest one is like an identity. He doesn't really have an identity. He's just a bastard who is kind of in the way, somehow threatening for the crown, even though he doesn't want it, as well as he's being trained to be an assassin and really has to hide who he is from people outside the castle or like the main area who he does become friends with. He's just living a completely different life on the side. So it's really juggling what he is, who he is in his relationships. And I want to say it felt very relaxing, not in the sense like the things going on, but like the world, how you're meeting people. It kind of felt like The Hobbit, sort of, where it's like a very whimsical world. You feel very comfortable in it, whereas like a lot of other fantasy stories, it's like, oh, this feels so different. This felt like very comfortable to me as a whole. And I would say the 3 books are Assassin's Apprentice, Royal Assassin, which I did enjoy a lot. It just didn't hit my top 10. Liked less than Mistborn. Really liked Mistborn. Really liked that book too. And then Assassin's Quest. Assassin's Quest was my least favorite of them. But I do think what Robin Hobb did best in this entire series is it wraps up and you feel so many different emotions for all the characters. But right at the end, you're like, it's so satisfying, not in the sense that everything ends perfect, it's a happy ending, you're like, this is exactly where I wanted this character to be, but the character is where they deserved to be, multiple of them I would say, just based on the choices that they made and the life that they lived. You feel like you weren't cheated, and like that's my highest form of like a compliment for an entire 3-book story is you get to the end and you're like, that ended exactly how I think it should have. I would have loved to be happier at the ending, but it ended how it should have, which I think is amazing. And also Robin Hobb's writing it just transports you. It's so good. It's very whimsical as like an entire vibe throughout the whole thing. 4.5 out of 5. So then we go to book 6. Book 6 is part of this series that I found through booktube, obviously, that I've become obsessed with and really is pushing me towards, I think I might be more of a sci-fi person than a fantasy person, which I never would have thought. I always viewed sci-fi as you gotta learn a lot of things. There's a lot of science that has to be involved. You have to tell the story of either is this completely outside of our realm of worlds, like no connection to Earth, or is it so far in the future and you got to build up like what happened from wherever the reader's sitting right now to where they are in the future, which feels like very difficult in a lot of like scientific reading, and kind of my issues with Mistborn, where I'm like, I don't want to feel like I'm reading a textbook. And this book and really this whole series has not made me feel like this, and this is Howling Dark, which is book 2 of the Sun Eater series. Christopher Rocky is the best writer I've ever read, like no question. I haven't read a lot of books, not a hot take, but like this is the best writing I've ever read, and also like the best plotting of stories on like an epic scale. I'm not finished with the series. I'm only through a couple books. Maybe you'll see another book here in my list. You will. But the story of book 1, where without spoiling anything, we have Hadrian Marlowe. I'm going to spoil the first 5 pages. He blew up a sun, and he's telling the story of how he got there and how he's like a vilified character in the history books, but he's going to run you through the whole thing. And he's born a Palatine, which is like this elite class of people who are royalty. He's like very distant cousins to the current king. He's not in any way, shape, or form competing for the crown whatsoever, but he's higher genetics than the average person, and that allows him to live so much longer. And he has a gripe in his internal family, and he tries to leave to like live out his dreams, and things happen. So you're following him, and I would really say the story of book 1 is understanding him and him getting in control of his life, for lack of a better term. That's all he's trying to do, is really grasp and control his life, which is an interesting story. I don't think it's the best book I've ever read, but it was really enjoyable. I like it better than I think like a lot of people that did online, or there are some people who are like, this is the best book. I don't think that in the series, but it's a really good book. And how it shifts into book 2 is Hadrian's a very cocky sort of character, for lack of a better term. He thinks he's right, so you follow him through book 1 to like get control of his life. Book 2 is him finding out that he's not always right, and he's not the smartest person in the room. Maybe he's not the best person, most capable person, the strongest person, but he never necessarily thinks he's the strongest person. He just kind of half proves it all the time. But this story is him kind of losing control of his purpose in his life that he had kind of figured out in book 1, and throws it on its head. And the twist in this book is one of the best like executed twists that is so unexpected that I've ever read, I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen something in a movie, anything that twisted me up like this, where I was just like, what? And then you kind of get a resolution of like, that's where we were, and now we have a new goal, a new purpose going into book 3. And that was awesome. Huge fan, 5 out of 5. Everything from here on out is a 5 out of 5, just a heads up, because I've read a lot of good books in the last 6 months. So now book 5 out of my top 10. Red Rising. This is the other sci-fi book, or I guess series, I would say, that has really convinced me the other way. This is like the number one book if you have a dude in your life and you're like, hey, he wants to get into reading, give him Red Rising. It's so short. We're talking about 400 pages. It's not a large commitment. You get through, I want to say the first like 100 pages is just the setup of like, here's the character, here's what's going on, and then it's an exciting action then forth. It's super interesting, it being like just in the future. It's a caste system. It's very heavily leaning on like Roman history, which I like Roman history, so do a lot of guys, if you haven't heard. But it turns into very like Hunger Games-esque, which it's a very different sort of story, because it's Hunger Games sort of like take over, kill. Hunger Games, you have to kill everyone. This, you just have to become the leader, become in charge, rule everyone rather than kill everyone. But you can kill them. No one's really gonna stop you. And also, I think the best part about it is the villain, the Jackal, who's just like, you don't really know who he is until they interact right near the end. He's such a mysterious, great villain in this book, and you're just sitting there like, who is this? What is he like? What is he gonna do? How are we gonna resolve this? And something that I do think Pierce Brown does so good in all three of these books in this series is you're getting close, like you've only got like 50 pages left, and you're like, how can everything get tied up here? And then he does it, and you're like, I can't believe I doubted him. Like, it all got cleaned up, and I am satisfied. So, 5 out of 5. Love Red Rising. Book 4. This is a book that I gave 4 stars, and then I can just continuously think about it, and I love it so much more. I probably finished this in like January or February. We are now July 4th. Hear the fireworks. That's why. I think about it constantly ever since I finished it, and I am just so obsessed with this book. And honestly, this author, which is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, it's such an amazing book where I read it the first time and I was like, I love the characters, I love the writing. I don't know if I'm going to finish this because I have no idea what's going on with the plot. Like, I was 3/4 of the way through and I was like, there's no plot here. I don't know what's going on. I'm just following these characters. And then it all kind of ties itself up at the end, and you're like, this is the direction we're going. But you have multiple point of views, but there's really 3 main point of views, I would say, which is Sandan Glokta. Which is Sandan Glokta. He's a tortured torturer. So he's a prisoner of war who got tortured. He's severely deformed. He's lost toes. His legs have been snapped. He's been missing so many teeth. And he now tortures people for his now crown, king, whoever. And he's so good at it. And you're like, this guy's despicable. He does like terrible things to people. He's torturing them. You get all the details. And you're like, I love this character so much. And you're just rooting for him so heavily. And then there's Logan Ninefingers, who is a murderer. He's killed so many people. He's like the most feared man in the North. Everyone's terrified of him. He's covered up with scars. He's got 9 fingers. And everyone tells stories about how terrifying he is and how he killed all these people. And he's just like, I've done bad things. I'm just kind of keeping it going. He's just kind of along for the ride. You're like, I'm rooting for this guy. He hasn't changed his ways, really. He's not going out of his way to murder people, but if he's involved, he's gonna do it. And you're like, this guy rocks. I'm rooting for him so much. And then there's this pompous guy, Giselle, who's just like a pompous, wealthy, noble, who's just an asshole. and you're like, this is the worst human being in the world. Well, our other two point of views are actual terrible human beings. He just sucks and you hate him. And you're rooting against him the whole time, and it's so much fun, and the writing's so funny. It's unbelievable. One of my favorite books of all time. And I finished book 2. I need to finish book 3. Now, book 3 on my list, which is The Will of the Many by James Islington. Islington? I'm not sure. Haven't heard it said out loud. But huge fan of this book. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. Same vibes as Red Rising, honestly. It just comes with a different level of rage, I would say. In the sense that in Red Rising, he's angry. And Darrow just wants to fight. He's a warrior, whatever. We got Viz, correct? I believe is the name. I read this in January. Viz is more composed, but it's the same sort of story. In the hiding, goes into like a school, and is trying to get through the school and solve other problems but there's so many different moving parts in this world, and this is why it's better than Red Rising, because it's a very similar story in my opinion. You learn so much more about the characters, the people, everything that's going on, and the world, and there's a lot more politics to it that's really, really enjoyable. But it does also go into like a Hunger Games sort of ending as well. It feels very much like these were influenced by Hunger Games, and both influenced heavily by Roman history as a whole. I do think the thing I love about this book is it takes turns you don't expect throughout. Because it's like, in part 1, you're like, all right, we made the character, the situations are set up, and then you're like, all right, we're going to ease our way, and he's going to get to the school, and then something very dramatic happens. And then school stuff's going on, and then something very dramatic happens that you're not expecting. There's a lot of twists and turns you're not expecting. And I will say, the epilogue was really interesting. I'm not positive on what it means at all, so I'm very excited for the next book when it comes out. I believe it comes out this fall, so I'll be getting that right when it comes out. I'm super excited for that. 5 out of 5. The next book I don't have a physical copy for, which is number 2, which is the third book, Demon in White, within the Sun Eater series. It shifts after book 2, and it leans heavier into politicking and really the story of Hadrian and magic and everything that you didn't expect. It continues, and it's such an unbelievable story. I can't talk about it enough to be like, without spoiling even more, but it's so amazing, and it's my favorite book ever. I take it back. It's the best book I've ever read. It's not my favorite book. And it's definitely the best book I've read this year. Not my favorite book, though. But 5 out of 5, unbelievable writing, everything continues. It doesn't let up on how good, and the thing I said about Howling Dark is you go through, and the motivation and the plot leads you to a result, and then it shifts. You're like, oh, now we're going to this different direction for this different reason. It adds on to who these characters are, like Valka and Hadrian and everyone on the sort of team in the Found family, and you completely shift what the motivation is, and you tell me what you think about Hadrian after book 3 compared to book 1. It's a completely different being of like who he is, how he's aged, how he's like developed as a whole. It's so unbelievable. I love that book. 5 out of 5. And my number 1 is Golden Sun, Pierce Brown. Red Rising book 2. This is same sort of vibes. I did like, so it kind of feels like we're still in the sort of academy, sort of like we're gonna do this whole Hunger Games sort of thing again, and you're like, man, that's disappointing. I wanted to get to know like the world and the politics without, obviously, without spoiling anything. And then it just shifts, and you're like, oh, this is very different. We're not actually doing that, which is exciting. And there are probably like 7 twists in this book where I didn't see coming at all, especially the one right at the end, for those who know. This is literally the one book, I think, ever that has immediately made me pick up the next book, which was book 3. Very much enjoyed, not as good as any of these. I immediately picked up the next book. I was like, I need to know how this ends, which I haven't read 4, 5, and 6. I would like to get to those closer towards when the final book comes out, so then I don't have like a huge gap between the next sort of continuation series before the last book comes out. But that's my goal, to at least probably get one more of these done, which would be, Iron Gold, before the end of the year. So those are my top 10 books. So, honorable mentions. One thing that I have read as well has been some manga, so I wanted to pick up because of booktube was other way. I have to hold books the other way, manga the other way. One Piece. I've heard such good things about the manga, and I read volumes 1 through 3. I left my bookmark in there. Super fun, and really enjoyed them. I have 4, 5, and 6 here. Haven't read those yet, but I plan on reading maybe 1 volume of this month, because I also read last month 20th Century Boys Volume 1. This after I picked up that One Piece. I had a friend recommend me this, so I bought Volume 1, and I am obsessed with it, and I'm going to read Volume 2 this month. This is much longer of just a single volume. It's so good. It's like these characters, they're grown up. I just knocked over a bunch of books. Now we're back. This group of friends, they grow up and they're adults. Their friend passes away, and what they're learning is their manga that they made when they were kids is now coming true, and it's becoming like a cult. And you're following this mystery of like, who's killing these people? What's this cult? Who's this guy? And it's so much fun. It's so interesting. After I finished the first one, I bought 2, 3, and 4 immediately after. So I'm very excited to read those this coming month. I'm definitely finishing Volume 2 of 20th Century Boys. Don't know about One Piece. Now to the books I'm going to read in July. In July, this is kind of a harder month for me. I usually want to do 4 a month, but this month, keeping my goal at 3, mainly because near the end of the month, my wife is going on a bachelorette trip, and I have 2 kids, so not going to be able to read that much, so my sister's coming to visit. And then the following week, I'm going on a bachelor party, and then I'm not going to be reading there. So I'm losing like a smooth 6 days during that span of time. So that's going to make things harder. So the first book, I didn't mention earlier, July 4th. So I've already started on this book. I have the dust jacket off, but this is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I have the Broken Binding edition because I pre-ordered the Broken Binding edition because how much I loved book 1 and 2 of the first Law trilogy, and it's so cool. And this felt like a story I'm more into. I've read a lot more horror and classical horror where it's like vampires and things of that nature. I felt like this was right up my alley. So it's a story of, there's a princess of Troy who's like a homeless like thief inside the Vatican, and she finds out that she's the Princess of Troy, and the Vatican is going to send her with the Devils, which is just like a ragtag group of vampire, werewolf, necromancer, a guy who can't die, and send her to Troy to try and take her rightful throne. But her cousins are like evil, who took over the throne, killed her mom, and the goal is for her to get there with this ragtag bunch who have to take her there. I am currently 160 pages in, which is like a third of the way through. I enjoy it. I enjoy Joe Abercrombie's writing. I heard John on Talking Story say that this reads like a movie, and then it was immediately picked up by James Cameron. It does read like a movie, and I can't get that out of my head after John said that. So I really I enjoy it. I really liked the first like 100 pages. The next like 60 have been fun. I feel like this is going to end up being like a 3.5 star read. Something that I enjoy. I'm always going to keep this book because it's cool. Like, it's so cool. But I don't know if I would ever reread this. Maybe if book 2 of this series that's going to keep continuing, like, blows me out of the water, change my mind and reread the whole series. But like, as I'm sitting through this, I'm like, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to be like, that was good. And I think that's how I'm going to end it. But what's keeping me going is Joe Abercrombie's writing. The story's not totally hooking me by any means, but the writing's fun, which I think you just get with Joe Abercrombie. The next book I want to read, I think I'm going to read in this order, is Hyperion, Dan Simmons. This is kind of under the same guise of I'm finding out I like sci-fi, I think, more than fantasy. And I read Robin Hobb because I wanted to read a classic. Well, nothing's more classic sci-fi than Hyperion. It's the only thing I know about it is it's supposed to be a retelling of like the Canterbury Tales, which sounds really fun, and everything sort of connects. Not a super long book, under 500 pages, I think. Right? Yeah, 470. And I really like the cover. I've always wanted to read it, but most of the time when I've seen it in stores, it's like those pocket ones. Like, I know I have, like, Stephen King's It, this pocket size. I hate reading in the pocket size. It's too small. I hate it. So most of the time I've only ever seen it like that. I went to the bookstore, saw it like this, immediately bought it, and I was like, all right, this is the time. So this is going to be my next read. And the final book of the month I'm going to try and guarantee to read is The Failures by Benjamin Lyer. I know nothing about this book. This is the Wonderland series, book 1. I believe this came out this year, and the only thing I know about this is from Mike's Fantasy Book Reviews on YouTube, BookTube. He just said, like, this weaves like the Dark Tower so many different sort of genres into one, and he said, like, the first 100 to 200 pages you're like, I don't know what's going on here, and then you get to the end and you're like, that was so bold and amazing and everything ties together like the Dark Tower. So I'm super excited for this. It's only like 500 pages, not a massive commitment. So I think I can get all 3 of these done, and I'm going to be reading physical copies. I'm very hit or miss on the audio side, so if I get through these 3, what would be next? I am thinking either Never Flinch by Stephen King. I've read all of the Mr. Mercedes and the Holly books. I am missing The Outsider. I never bought that. I got that in the library a bunch of years ago. But either that, or if I might do an audiobook, because I do have the audiobook of The Shadow of What Was Lost over here. That book, it's James Islington. I haven't read that series. I have the first book, and I really enjoyed The Will of Many. And I've just heard that it's a really good plot. and it all ties up really nicely. So I would like to read that. Or the last option is the third book in the first law, which I'm super tempted to read, but I don't think I can squeeze it in this month. So I think I'm planning for that one next month, because everything I've heard about Best Served Cold is such an interesting book, and I think that one will be my favorite. I just want to finish the first law trilogy first before I go to that one, obviously, but I'm really, really excited for that one, so I want to set myself up for that one, hopefully by May, or not May, what am I talking about? Hopefully set myself up for that in September, and then maybe Heroes in October. I think I'm just going to read anything that Joe Abercrombie writes. Like, I really, really enjoy that. So that's my wrap up of the first half of the year and my July TBR. Thanks for joining me. If not, you didn't join me, then you won't even hear this part. So even better. See ya.